Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, Simply Skeptic. You can call me Sam, and you're welcome again to my channel. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you enjoy today's video. Today's video, as I promised last time, is about slavery in the Bible. Slavery. What does the God of the Bible say about slavery? Does he endorse slavery? What is slavery in the first place? Let's take a closer look at the word. So, slavery, I mean, if you look in dictionaries, they they will give you different forms of, definitions and all that. But I have put down some points about the kind of things you have to find in in a relationship to know that it is a relationship between a master and a slave, where the master is owning another human being as their property. So there are key elements in slavery. So the first one, as I've pointed out here, sorry, just give me a moment. Yeah, so the first one is the ownership as property. So you own the person. Sorry, just bear with me. I am going to use that one. Yeah, so it's the ownership of a human as property. So you own a human being as your property, and you buy them as a commodity. The slave master does not have a contract with the slave. Okay, because the slave is just like an animal that you buy on the market. When you go to town and you buy a goat, people in the West are not familiar with this, but in Africa, when we go to the market, we are able to buy live animals. And when you go and you buy a live animal, the live animal, you don't have a contract with the live animal. You have a contract with the seller of the animal, but not with the animal. So that's how slavery is like. You go and then you buy the slave, but you don't have a contract with the slave because the slave doesn't have any right. Okay, so there's no contract because the slave doesn't have any rights, any human rights. This is why it's not the same as you being employed because your employer has a contract with you, and they are providing you with remuneration so that you provide a service. And if both parties agree, then you sign the document. But this is not what goes on between a master and a slave because the slave has no right. Um, yeah, so the slave does not live as they want. The master determines how the slave will live their life because the master is the owner of the slave. And the master can do whatever they please with the slave, and the life of the slave is less valued, less than a free person. So these are some of the things you have to look out for to know that slavery is going on. Yeah. So, and obviously these things are unethical, but we're going to see that in the Bible it is endorsed. Jehovah God gives permission to the Israelites to do this to people who are not Israelites. So if I go forward, just bear with me. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, with the things I've mentioned here, clearly nobody wants to be in that kind of relationship, you know, with someone who is their master and can do all these things to them. Nobody wants that. And no, I don't believe that a loving God would endorse this kind of horrible, thing. So we'll go into the Bible and see. So now the importance, this topic is very important. Um, yeah, it's going to be a bit lengthy, but because I have to go into the details, so you can take your time and watch it whenever you're free. You don't have to watch everything at a go. You can take your time because it has to be thorough, it has to be detailed, so we see everything that we have to see to make an informed decision. But this topic is very important. Um, and one of the main reasons is that the Bible was the fuel for the transatlantic slavery. The slavery where black people were owned for over 400 years. The people who were doing this were Christians, and the Bible was the tool that they used to do what they did. I mean, without Christianity, it would still have happened because slavery was going on before the transatlantic slavery. However, you cannot ignore the fact that because these people are Christians and they believe that the creator of the universe is Jesus Christ, and the word of Jesus Christ is the Bible, which gives them a moral guide. You cannot ignore the fact that this is what motivated them. This is what gave them the authority to do what they did. Because to them, they cannot do anything until their God tells them it is the right thing. And because the Bible says that it is okay to own human beings, as we're going to see, they thought that it was perfectly fine to own black people as slaves. Okay? And that is why they were able to do what they did. So you cannot ignore the fact that the Bible played an instrumental role. So this transatlantic slavery, that is what is something that happened, we cannot ignore. It happened for 400 years. White people owning black people for over 400 years. This is our history. This is why it is important for us to know what the Bible says. And the Bible is the most popular book in the history of humankind. It's the most sold book in the history of humankind, and it is used everywhere in the world. And in many parts of the world, it is used to shape public policy. Okay, so it is important for us to know what is in the book and what it says about slavery. Is it a moral book? Is it an immoral book? We're going to look at that. Um, yeah. So if I go further, so this is an image of a white slave master beating his black slave. If you read history, you will know that the white slave masters beat their slaves. So this picture, was by Walter George Mason in 1853. I have to give the credits for the people who made, the images for copyright reasons. So that's why I'm mentioning whoever made the art. Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that happened to our ancestors. They were beaten mercilessly by white slave masters. Okay, horrible beatings, horrible treatment, torture. And if you watch the stories, the kind of things that went on, your heart will bleed. Why should human beings be treated like this? Like even less than animals? Why should this happen? And I could no longer, I just, I can never be a Christian. Even my ghost will never be a Christian because I know I have read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. It endorses slavery completely. At no point in the Bible, not even I can dare any Christian watching me to show me just one sentence in the Bible that says that owning a human being as a property is wrong or is sinful. You will not find even one in the whole Bible. Yet, there are multiple Bible verses that say that it is okay to own human beings as property, as your property, and use them as you please. And you can even pass them on to your children as inherited property. These came from the mouth of Jehovah, according to the Bible. Okay? Multiple verses. The only time in the Bible where the God of the Bible has a problem with slavery is when you're trying to own an Israelite as a slave. So the Israelites went to Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt. And we know that the God of the Bible performed amazing miracles according to the Bible, performed miracles to free them from slavery because they are his people. He's not saying that slavery in and of itself is a bad thing. It is only bad when you are doing it to my chosen people, the Israelites. They are my chosen people. That's why you don't have to do it to them. But you can do it to other people. We'll get to the verses. I just have to show you some of these images. This is a slave who has been beaten mercilessly, horribly. Okay? Just pathetic. These are the things that they went through. And when you read Exodus chapter 21, if you have a Bible, and that's why when I'm doing these things, I want people to have their Bibles close by, because for me, when I'm doing everything based on evidence, I'm not speaking just from my mind, I'm speaking with facts. The fact is that the Bible endorses slavery. And I have two Bibles here right now. Some of the passages I've already memorized. But if you have a Bible, just read it. Exodus chapter 21, verse 20 to 21. Okay, it tells you that you can beat your slave. And even if the slave dies after a day or two, the slave master is not to be punished, because the death of his slave is punishment for him enough. Okay, these are the horrible things. The God of the Bible not only allows you to beat your slave, but he allows you to even beat them to death. As long as they die after a day or two, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the Bible says that God said. Okay, so it's just wrong. And this image was from what? I think it was by Macpherson and Oliver. We'll go to the next screen. And this is how black people were put in ships and sent over the ocean, the transatlantic slavery, where they were sent over the ocean to America and Europe and other places. Look at how they've laid them down like they are sardines. And the way they're laying down there, they cannot move. They cannot even move. Okay? And if you want to, empty your bowels, okay? Like go to the gents or ladies. There's nothing like that. You have to, excuse my language, shit on yourself there. This is what they went through. Horrible experiences that they went through. Horrible experiences. And this is what the Bible is endorsing, saying that yes, it's okay for you to do that, as long as they are not Israelites. I'll show the verses. I know that some Christians are saying, oh, but you haven't shown verses, any Bible verses. I'll get there. But I want to show you this is what went on. These are the horrible things that our ancestors faced. And the Bible is saying that it is okay to do these things. So what does the Bible say about slavery? The Old Testament. We're starting with the Old Testament. Yeah, so in order for us to understand what the God of the Bible thinks about slavery or says about slavery, or his perception about slavery, whether it is good or bad, let us look at some examples of things that he has made pronouncements about. Okay, so when you look at something like adultery, fornication, wearing mixed fabric. So these things are things that the God of the Bible hates. And he clearly says that adultery is wrong. Okay? He makes it clear that I do not want you to commit sexual immorality. He makes it point blank. fornication, adultery is wrong. Do not do it. And whenever he likes something, he lets you know that I want you to do this. I want you to fellowship. I want you to worship me. He says it clearly. So we'll look at some of these examples. So in Exodus 20, verse 14, you shall not commit adultery. Okay? He's making it clear that he doesn't like that. Now, let's remember as we're going into the Bible that the Bible is a moral guide for Christians. So if we go back 500 years into the past, let us understand that the white slave masters, when they needed moral guide, they took the Bible because they were Christians at the time. They were all Christians. Christianity was very powerful and very strong 500 years ago in Europe, just like Islam is strong in Saudi Arabia and Pakistan today. Or maybe it was even stronger because even their laws were from the Bible, just like today in Saudi Arabia. The laws of Saudi Arabia are from the Quran and the Hadith, the Sharia law. 500 years ago, the laws in Europe were from the Bible. Okay, so when they needed moral guidance, they went into the Bible to see what God says about a specific topic. So if when they wanted to own slaves, they needed God to say whether it is good to own slaves or it is bad to own slaves, because they need that guide. So imagine that you're a slave master back then and you need a guide from you need moral guidance about whether slavery is good or bad. And you believe that the God of the Bible is your God and he's the creator of the whole universe. And you are going into the Bible, his word, to know what he says specifically about slavery, so that you will either engage in slavery and buy slaves and own them, or desist from that behavior. So we'll go into it and then we'll read the passages and see whether this God is against or for slavery. So here, the God of the Bible has made it clear that he's against adultery. Okay? He's against adultery. And he says, you shall not commit adultery. And by the way, Exodus 20, verse 14 is a law. It is a law that Jehovah God gave to Moses. It is one of the 613 laws that Jehovah God gave to Moses. Okay? Because the God of the Bible, he gave 10 commandments plus 603 other commandments, which most people don't read those ones. But the total number is 613, because you have the first 10 commandments, then it follows number 11, number 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, down up to 613. So this is one of the laws. It says that you should not commit adultery. He has made it clear. It is so clear that anybody can understand it. Okay? Just a minute. That anyone can understand it. So do not commit adultery. So if you were a Christian, even 500 years ago, and you wanted to know if adultery was wrong or right, you read this from your God, you know that adultery is wrong. So Leviticus 19:19, he says, do not wear clothing woven of two kinds of material. So if you're a Christian and you saw this and you respected your God, you will not wear clothing woven of two kinds of fabric, two kinds of material. Because he has made it clear that do not wear clothing woven of two kinds of material. Okay? That's what God is saying. Now, when it comes to slavery, what does he say about slavery? And this is the interesting part. Because now, imagine that you're a slave master or you're a white man living 500 years ago, and you have realized that you have gone to Africa and your people are taking slaves. And you wanted moral guidance from your God, because your God is the God of the Bible. and you wanted to know what he says about slavery. Now, like I've put down here, there is not a single passage in the Bible that condemns the act of owning another human being as property. I dare anyone to bring me even one verse. You will not find it. The only time you find a verse like that is when it is saying that don't don't own Israelites. It will not tell you that slavery in and of itself is a bad thing. So you will not find a single verse, like I've said here. And then, yeah, on the contrary, there are so many verses where God is condoning slavery. So this is the first example that I'm going to show you, okay, of God condoning slavery in the Bible, the God of the Bible. Personally, I don't believe that it was a God who gave these laws. I believe that it was all from the mind of humans. They created these laws. It was not from a God. But they had to say that it came from God so that people respect their words. I don't believe that a God even gave these words. But they are saying that God gave these laws. So let's see. Let's see if they are ethical. When Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46. Okay, so for me, this was the main verse for me that made me really question the God of the Bible. Okay, this was the passage for me. We're starting from the Old Testament. Now, remember, I've told you that the Israelites, when they went to Egypt, they went to Egypt as slaves. The God of the Bible did not like that because the Israelites were his children. So he didn't want them to be slaves, you know. But so they went into slavery, then he freed them. When you go to Sunday school, you think that, oh, the God of the Bible hates slavery. That is why he did what he did. But you don't know because you haven't read the Bible thoroughly. You don't know that after they left slavery, Moses and his people left slavery. Just after they left, they themselves went and took their own slaves, took people as slaves. And this is one of the laws that Jehovah God is giving them permission to own slaves. So here we are going to dissect it. And I'm not going to do everything today because the passages are many. We have to do some, analyze some of them, and then leave the rest for later. And we'll come back. I know Christians will come back with a lot of responses. Me, I have spoken to multiple Christians for the past 6 years because I left Christianity like 6 years ago. And I've spoken to even PhD people who are doing PhD in biblical studies, in theology. I've spoken to a lot of pastors, men of God. I've heard all the reasons that they will give. None of them is reasonable enough. None of them is tangible. Even so, I don't. So there's nothing new that you can present. But I welcome it. I'm open-minded. So bring something and let's discuss. But yeah, I'll look at them, and if they make sense, I'll accept them. But Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46. Your male and female slaves, and here this is Jehovah God. Now, Jehovah God is giving a command here. This is Jehovah God speaking. When you read Leviticus chapter 25, verse 1, it will tell you that, and the Lord God told Moses. So when you start from there, it makes it clear that it is Jehovah God who is speaking. Okay? Jehovah God who is speaking these words. So he starts to give laws in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 1. Jehovah opens his mouth and then starts to give laws, Then when you get to Leviticus chapter 25, verse 44 to 46, this is where he gives laws about slaves. Okay, slaves who you can own as your property forever. This is where he starts to give the laws. Okay, so this is Jehovah speaking to Moses, and he says that your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. So bear this in mind. He is telling Moses that he can get the slaves from the nations around you because he doesn't want Moses to get slaves from among the Israelites. The God of the Bible has human emotions. He loves Israel more than any other people. Okay? When we as humans, when we have children, we love our children more than other people's children. Okay? So it's a human emotion. So the God of the Bible, he acts like a human, where he can only love one nation, which is Israel, more than other nations. And so he himself realizes that slavery is wrong. So he does not want Moses to enslave other Israelites because it would hurt him. You know, if somebody hurts your children, it will hurt you. Okay? The God of the Bible will hurt if people made Israelites slaves. So he's specifying that if you want slaves, then you have to go to the other nations. Somebody into as slaves. Israel ni no de oye nipa. Into slave. So that is why he is specifying that go to the nations around you, and from them you can buy slaves. This word is very important for me, buy, because he's specifying that there's a market there. Okay, there's a market where you can buy and sell human beings as property. And if you've read a little bit of history, you know that slavery was common in ancient times, and there was a market where you can sell and buy human beings. And he is specifying here that you can just take money, go and buy some of these slaves. And it says, you may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. Okay? So they will become your property. That's what a whole God is saying, that you can make a human being your property. Now, it says, if you continue, it says, you can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life. Aye! When I saw this, I was like, what? What? This is not the God. Guys, forgive me. I think I'm screaming over my head, but yeah. Sometimes I get emotional when I read these passages. It's just too horrible that it should even come from a God. This is not from a God. This is from a human being who is wicked in the heart, okay, and wants to do these things to people who are not his people, Because how can you say that, okay, you can bequeath them to your children as inherited property? So you go to the market, you buy a human being as your property, and then you use the human being for so many years of your life. And when you are dying, because this human being is just your property, you add this human being to your other properties, the goats you have, the land you have, and the cars you have, and then put them in a will and pass the human being on to your children as inherited property. Does this make sense? Like, is this moral to do this to a human being and pass a human being on to your children as inherited property? This is so degrading. Why would anybody think that a God actually said this? Or that even a decent human being said it, let alone a God? And it says that you can make them slaves for life. You can make, because they are just property, you can make them slaves for life. And then when you get here, he says, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. So here he's specifying, note that over here he says the nations around you. The nations around you. Contrast that with Israel. Okay? The nations around you are not Israelites. So for them, every horrible thing that he has said here, you can do to them. You can own them as property forever. You can make them slaves for life. And you can pass them on to your children as inherited property. Then over here, he says, but you must not do these horrible things I have said to your fellow Israelites. And I'm paraphrasing, but obviously what he says here is, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelite ruthlessly. So it is contrasting, it's saying that whatever thing I have said up here, you do not do the same things to the Israelites. Rather, you do it to the nations around you, the people from the nations around you. Okay? So that's what he's saying. And this clearly is immoral. This is wrong to say that you can do this to a human being. Imagine that today there was a nation that was saying that you can do these things to a human. There will be a public outreach, a worldwide outreach. Look at what Libya was doing and the outreach that came. There was a lot of protest around the world. Protest around the world. Everybody rose up. No, we will not allow this. We will not allow this. There was a lot of protest on embassies, Libyan embassies, and all that. So imagine that if Libya said that they will put this in their law, what I've just read in their laws. Imagine the outcry. And then you want to convince me that this, because it's in the Bible, it's fine. Just because it's in the Bible, it's fine. Even Christians know that this is not right. This is wrong. Okay? This is not right. Yeah. Um. So I think I'll probably come to the end of today's session, and then we'll continue. Okay, we'll continue. I'll bring the other verses because there are some verses that you have to take note of to really understand what I just read. So I think I'll end maybe on this part, or maybe let me just do the Old Testament. Then we'll come to the New Testament another time. So Leviticus 25. When you read Leviticus 25, verse 39 to 43, also verse 47 to 50, it talks about Israelite slaves. Now over here, you have to be smart. Because if you're not smart, a Christian can easily deceive you that the slavery in the Bible, it was just indentured servitude, and also you could leave after 6 years. But you have to read the Bible carefully, because the only people who can leave after 6 years are Israelites. So these are passages you have to take note of. So over here, I think it says, yeah, if any of your fellow Israelite becomes poor and sells himself to you, do not make him work as slaves. Okay, so this is Jehovah telling the Israelites that if their fellow Israelite becomes poor and sells themselves to you, because this is one of the ways where people became slaves in ancient times, where if you're poor, you can sell yourself to someone and work for them for a number of years and then leave. So that's like indentured servitude. But here, remember that, like, you have to take note of the fact that he's talking about Israelites. He says fellow Israelites. fellow Israelites. Okay, so he's just talking about fellow Israelites. But if you contrast it with what we read previously in Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46, specifically the verse 44, it says over there that if you want slaves, you can go to the foreign lands, the foreign nations. Okay, so that the law over there, the stipulation in Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46, is only for the foreign slaves. And Leviticus 25, verse 39 to 43 is only for Israelites, because the verse 44 to 46 is a continuation of this, which is 39 to 43. So you have to know the distinction. Anytime the God of the Bible is talking about Israelite slaves, it is more lenient. Okay, that is why he's saying that if your fellow Israelite, now in this case, when you look at the foreign slaves in verse 44, I highlighted a key word, which is buy, to buy, B-U-Y. Because in ancient times, they had a market where you can go and buy human beings as property. But over here, it is just your fellow Israelite who has run out of money, is poor, okay, and is selling themselves to you. He has come to you that I'll work for you. So he's doing it willfully. Whereas in Leviticus 25, verse 44 to 46, the person is not doing it willfully, because nobody will say that I want to be your property for life, and then you can pass me to your children as inherited property. Nobody wants to do that. Even the writer of these passages knows that that is wrong. That is why here he's saying that if any of your fellow Israelites, sells themselves, do not make him work as a slave. So whoever is writing this realizes that working as a slave is very difficult. It's a very tedious job. So the Israelites should not work as slaves, because the work of a slave is too tedious, and nobody wants to do that horrible work, because it will strain your body, and it can even have health consequences on your body. So because the God of the Bible doesn't want the Israelites to suffer, he said that do not make your fellow Israelites work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired workers and temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of Jubilee. So the year of Jubilee is the 7th year of service. If you work 6 years, then in the year of Jubilee, which is the 7th year, you are allowed to go free. But this is only for Israelites. Let me stress that it is only for Israelites. Then verse 41, then they and their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans and to the property of their ancestors. Because the Israelites are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt, they must not be sold as slaves. So he's stressing, do not sell them as slaves, because they are Israelites. Don't sell them as slaves. And it says, verse 43, do not rule over them, the Israelites, ruthlessly, but fear your God. Do not rule over them ruthlessly, but fear your God. And this is verse 43. But immediately you get to verse 44, that is where he will show the Israelites where they can get the slaves. And that is why he said in verse 44 that now you can go to the foreign land and buy slaves from there if you need slaves. But over here, he's saying that you should not let the Israelites work as slaves. Okay? Don't let them work as slaves. And don't sell them as slaves. And do not rule over them ruthlessly. So in Exodus 21, verse 28, I'm trying to do the Old Testament. 28 verse 32. Yeah, it says that if a bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is to be stoned to death. But if you read the other verses, but then if you read Exodus 28, I've forgotten the verse, but I think it should be around there. Like if you keep reading, you realize that when a bull gores someone who is not a slave, is a free person, the owner will also be killed, because Jehovah values the life of a free person as higher than that of a slave. So the punishment that you get if your bull gores a slave is the punishment is not as how should I put this? It's not as harsh as if you kill a free person. Okay, so when you read, let me see if I can find the verse. I'm trying to not spend a lot of time on this because we've spent about 40 minutes already. But it's in Exodus. So Exodus 21. Yeah. So if you read Exodus chapter 21, verse from verse 28. But if you get to verse 29, it says that it will tell you that if the bull had been in the habit of attacking people and its owner had been warned but did not keep it penned, then if it gores someone to death, it is to be stoned, and its owner is to be put to death also. If you kill someone who is a free person, not a slave, if your bull gores that person to death, you, the owner, you will also be killed because you've already been warned to keep your bull safe. So the bull will be killed, and you, the owner of the bull, will also be killed because your bull killed a free person. But if your bull kills a slave, because the life of the slave is worth less the life of a free person, you just pay 30 shekels and the bull is killed. That's it. So Jehovah is showing here that the life of a slave is less than that of a free person. Okay, so this is dehumanizing because a free person has more value than a slave. This shows that nobody wants to be a slave, and yet he's condoning it and telling the Israelites that you can go and buy slaves. Let us remember that. Sorry, just give me a moment. Yeah, let us remember that the God of the Old Testament is very tribalistic, and he looks down on other tribes, but loves Israel. Okay, so he always discriminates against other tribes. And if you've read the Bible, the Old Testament, you know. So I've given a few examples here of when the God of the Bible discriminates against other tribes. So in Deuteronomy 14, verse 21, he told the Israelites that if you find a dog that is already dead, do not eat that dog. Don't don't krama efunu. Don't eat it. Don't eat it. Mm? Don't eat it. Rather, give it to a foreigner. In fact, it says that sell it. Hey, because you go petty. He's saying that sell the dog to the foreigner because foreigner no only way Jimmy into on the yenton mano. Krama efunu no. Yen san ton man no nwe. But ono de oyeni penti, ono usually de oyeni penti no. Oyeni penti tru. Into on de mo nwe. Yen na yen ye usual for ne. Say ye jimi nti no. Enye so ode che keke o. O san aton ama yen ye jimi nti. This is what is going on in the Bible. This is not from a God. This is from human beings. It's just from human beings who have written a book to control, to have power and control. You know, they are saying that, okay, yes, sell the dead dog to foreigners to eat. Don't eat it. Of course, these verses, I'm not reading the whole passage from the Bible, so you can read it in your own time, but you can see the verses here. You know, in Deuteronomy 23, verse 19 to 20, the God of the Bible says that the Israelites should charge interest to foreigners. When they lend them money, they should charge interest on top of the money that they have lent them. But when they lend money to their fellow Israelites, they should charge no interest. So the God of the Bible discriminates. He's discriminatory. Always, he wants to favor the Israelites. He's always saying that, oh, be nice to your fellow Israelites. Be nice to your fellow Israelites. But as for the foreigners, kill them. Kill them. Charge them interest. You know, you can enslave them. So he always likes Israel and gives them the nicest rules so that they can improve their well-being. Okay, and then for other people who are not Israelites, he's always, you know, making pronouncements that will make their life a torture. That's what he's doing. Because if you're telling someone to sell a dead dog to someone to eat, but not to your fellow Israelite, you are charging interest to them, but you will not charge it to your fellow Israelites. And we know about the numerous genocides in the Bible. That is another topic we'll do. You're committing genocide, okay? Also, it's a whole topic. Genocide is a whole topic. It's one of the reasons I left Christianity. Genocide, they kill even children and babies because God of the Bible gave them command to go kill the children, kill the babies. I'll show you those verses in the Bible later. So genocides are in the Bible. And who are they doing it to? They are doing it to other people, other tribes. So the God of the Bible, he is like a human being who has human emotions. He loves his children, but doesn't love other people's children as much. Yes, once in a while, he can say something nice about other tribes, something decent like love other tribes. But then he will also say that you should kill them all in other verses. This is the Exodus 21 that I spoke about, where I'm not going to read it in full, but it says, Jehovah says that you can beat your slaves, and if they die after a day, it says, or if they do not die after a day or two. So if 1 or 2 days pass before they die, then the master is not to be punished. So this is the kind of horrible things that the Bible is condoning. Now, some people will say, oh, um, the God of the Bible was regulating slavery. You know, and I'm thinking, why would a God regulate slavery? You should just say it is wrong and thou shalt not do that ever. Because if you can say that people should not wear fabric made from two materials, how difficult would it be for you to say don't own another human being as property? It is wrong. Okay, so we've seen clearly from the Old Testament verses, and by the way, the verses that I've presented, passages, they are not exhaustive. There are many other passages, but we don't have time to go into all of them. Okay, but clearly what we've seen shows that the God of the Bible has no problem with the ownership of a human being as property. At no point does he say that it is wrong to do that. Rather, he's telling the Israelites to go and buy slaves. Okay. Yeah, so here we can see, do not cut the hair on the side of your head. He made it so clear, do not cut the hair on the sides of your head, or clip off the edges of your beard. I mean, he could have just said, do not own human beings as property. Simple. If you can say something as trivial as this, you can be this clear about it. And slavery, in which millions and millions of people are going to suffer from, you cannot just say, do not own human beings as property. So next time we'll go into the New Testament. This is the Old Testament, and I'm sure that the people will come with the responses. We'll look at the responses, and we can discuss them later. So yeah, thank you for watching. Um, and yeah, I'll come back with more videos. I will do the New Testament next time, and then after that video, we'll look at the Christian responses, because there's many Christian responses, and I'll look at them one after the other and explain why these responses are not good enough, and they still don't disprove the fact that the Bible endorses slavery. Okay, thank you very much.